Okay, there we are. Now we're recording. So just to kind of use that as an illustration, okay? But what we want to do is learn how to use the lines in an image. Oh, come on, hold on. Let me get this stuff off here. Trying to control two programs at the same time here. Okay, there we are. Let's go back here. Undo that. Okay, so if we look at one visual vibration, which is a pattern of lines, we can see that these diagonals are coming in, and they're very, we could almost say haphazard, like random in a sense, although, and that energy is very childlike, it's very playful. Would you guys agree?
Yes.
Okay, it's very unorderly, it's not ordered, it's not structured, it's not schooled, right? It's just, it's playful and fun. In the midst of all of that, you have this other energy, which are just these strong, let's do a different color here. And we'll go with the blue. And you can see in her skirt, lots of verticals are coming down through the way that she's holding her jacket. The verticals through here, her belt buckle. I mean, all of these are decisions that the artist made. She could have been dressed in any different kind of way, some other way. She could have been wearing a full dress or something, but he wanted those elements in there. You can see it in the walls. Now, you may just say, well, the wall is vertical. Well, of course it is. That's fine. The bottom of the chalkboard is horizontal. Those all just play into the story. The desk is very horizontal. Okay. The neck of this little boy, the core shadow in his neck, this part of the neck, very, very vertical. So what you're looking for are all these little nuances that the artist took time to actually design and compose. So one of the things that you might, depending on your experience, sometimes a lot of artists today think, oh, I can go in and, in an afternoon, pop out a great painting. And these guys and ladies, they didn't do that. They spent lots and lots of time engineering, crafting their work. And so this is that layer that's underneath the painting that they're working on. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And so in this specific case, Norman Rockwell said that one of the keys to his success was that he could make you feel two emotions in the same painting. And one of the reasons that's really important is because if you come in one state of consciousness, and then as you're experiencing the painting, you move into a different state of consciousness, right? You have a different state of being or feeling. You've now moved through time. And the painting then becomes also animated, so it becomes more than just a captured moment or experience. I mean, a captured moment becomes an experience, a very dynamic experience. And so one of the tricks to making that happen in your work is to be conscious of having these juxtaposing vibrations in the image. Cool?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Maybe cool, but I'm not quite sure how you use it.
Okay.
Well, the actual process, maybe.
Okay, so let me show you.
I see the chalk down there is because it's so haphazard. Is that the vibration of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's on a diagonal. In the midst of all of these verticals and horizontals, it sticks out like a sore thumb, right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to hide it. He doesn't want to hide that chalk. Now there is another eraser. There's a, that he did hide inside of the picture. Can you see it?
I see something on the kid's head. I don't know what.
Yeah, that's
Is
an
that
eraser.
Oh, I thought it was a sandwich.
Let's bring up a clearer image, okay?
Had a good sense of humor, right?
He had an incredible sense of humor.
I didn't see that till just a minute ago.
I saw this painting so many times, and I didn't realize it until I went through I was doing it through the course, and I was like, "What? That's awesome."
Wasn't that what she's looking at? I mean, I see a diagonal line between the eraser and where her eyes are looking. Isn't that what she's looking at? She's kind of smiling, smirking
It's
at
possible. Let me see. Let me get my annotations back. So you're saying, okay, if she's looking this direction, well,
she's looking at the eraser, I think.
That's what it looks like.
it might
Or
be.
the little girl's face or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that line of sight, and you can see that if we're saying we're going from her eyes to the eraser, right?
Mhm.
It creates a diagonal.
Right.
So now the question then that comes in my mind is, okay, if that's the diagonal, then he would have repeated that somewhere, okay? And I'm trying to find where. I guess you could probably say there it's
The
repeated
jacket?
there. You're saying
The folds
inside
of the jacket right there.
right here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now let me ask you, which is stronger?
The boy's neck on the left side too is like at an angle.
This one here?
No, the other guy on the far left, his neck on the other side. See how right there? Yeah.
Okay, the back of his shoulders. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's possible. Maybe we come from the back of her head through her cheek. Okay, it's possible that there's that connection. So when you find a line, the thing you want to do is begin to look in the nuances. Sometimes it's very clear, sometimes it's hidden, but you want to try to find it where it's echoed or repeated. Okay, that's I think the fourth lesson in there. Is the
And
echoing.
we're trying to find it so that we can learn to do it in our own work. Is that the idea?
Absolutely. So like if you're,
Sorry, isn't that some of it just perspective though?
there's absolutely no perspective in this picture.
Oh,
Now you may call it perspective because you may say, well, let me get my pen here. There's this coming here, and let's say we're going to come to some vanishing line somewhere. Okay. But I would challenge you guys to find your 1 or 2 or 3 point perspective in this.
I guess maybe I'm the wrong term. But just the way they're sitting, being able to just
there's like there's a foreshortening, you mean?
Yeah, almost. I mean, it seems like it would happen anyway because you'd always see that side of the boy's face, and then you'd see the back of the girl's face, and then the back of the other boy's face, just because of the way they're sitting. Is that wrong?
I'm not sure what you're saying. Say that again.
I'm just saying that the way they're sitting, you're going to see those lines anyway because the way she's standing, she's the focal point. So the boy on the left is going to be a little bit further away from her, and you're going to see the side of his face no matter what, because that's the way that the painting is. And the girl in the center, you would see the back of her head, and then the boy off to the right.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I
Yeah.
probably the wrong term.
I get it.
I see what you're saying. So one thing that we can then look at would be like if we took their heads and we put them in a box. So in this case, the box we'd be looking really at the back of the box.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even with this little guy, it might even be tilted back a little bit more. Maybe that's the top of the box. It's coming in. We see the side of the box with her. Oops. Her head is here.
So why are you doing this?
This is a way when you're doing figure drawing to quickly lay in the masses of the figure. And it's one way to like begin to, like, let's say you're laying out figures, like in this case, this kid's here. Then you can begin to organize what they call the gazing direction, the way that the eye is being directed. Norman Rockwell's teacher was a guy named George Bridgman. Have you ever heard of the Bridgman
George
books?
who?
Bridgman?
Bridgman,
George
yeah.
Bridgman.
I've
And
heard
so
of it.
George Bridgman wrote a whole bunch of books on drawing, and especially like figure drawing. And the way that he would teach his students to start were with these little block shapes. So you come out with the torso, you know, maybe the pelvis. It was just a very quick way of adding, like putting volume and form together. And so, and he was Rockwell's teacher. So in this case, and you can find it in a lot of these artists, if you just do these square or these boxes over top of them, it begins to reveal how the artist was thinking of the mass of that part of the person. So like in this case, you would put a box here for that table. Very, you know, that's pretty straightforward. You can organize stuff like that. You can see it inside her hat. It's a nice way also to figure out the lighting. So this is going to be bright. This is going to be a little in shade, and this is going to be your midtone. It's just a very quick way of trying to organize light as well. But I would encourage you guys. You may even be able to download a Bridgman book somewhere in a PDF or something online. But if you can, they're really, really great books. I was introduced to the Bridgman books when I was about 15. I went to an auction, and there was a local artist who died. And so they had all these boxes with all his like paints in and books and all this stuff. And I won my first lot at an auction. And when they said sold, I screamed. I'm like, yeah! It was hilarious. And I didn't even know really what was in it, right? I was just happy I won some art thing, you know? And so when I looked through it, there were a bunch of Bridgman books in there. And then there was also this manual that was probably about maybe 2 to 3 inches thick. And it was put together by Rockwell, Loomis, like all these great artists and illustrators out of the New York the New York Students League or whatever it is. And that's where Bridgman taught. And so it was a treasure to have this manual that they put together on drawing. So in this, just to recap, what we're really looking at is this juxtaposition in conjunction with just the orderliness of, and then down here you have a little bit there, right?
That helps a lot. That does. I understand it now.
So let me bring up my my whiteboard here, and let's talk through a scenario that we can create. What kind of things, Katie, do you like to draw or paint?
I've been enjoying doing the bottles and flowers, you know, the jars and flowers.
Okay.
I think you commented on that one or something. That's where you got my name.
What was that?
That's where you got my name, I think.
On the bottles and the flowers.
Oh, you don't remember the blue glass jars?
I don't, and I feel horrible for not.
Okay, that's fine.
But I did pick up one of your pieces before we met that I looked at and I was like, oh, that has such a great change of charge. So let me see if it's oh, right here it is. Okay, cool. So let me share that part of my screen. Do you see?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's an old one that I did a long time ago.
Oh, I love that.
But do you see the difference in energy when you look out at the sky and you have all those horizontals, right? And it's open. It's low friction. I call it low friction, meaning the value contrast between the white and the blue in the sky isn't very strong. It's enough to see there's stuff going on in the sky, but not enough to cause you to not be at peace, right? And you have all of these horizontals flowing through there that trigger a sense of calm in us. And it's very open. But then you look right next to it and you have all of these zigzag diagonals all over the place.
Yeah.
And when I see this picture, I see two people sitting there, one person focused and enjoying the calm and the other person in some anxiety of, I got to get back to the office. I got to remember to pay the bills. I got to, And so I think
There's the one sitting closer to the exit behind us.
And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, wow, this is fun. I had a fun experience looking at that piece.
Well, great.
You know what? I want to say I really, really like it. And I really, really like it because so many times I see other artists doing this kind of thing, and it's very cliche. And yours is absolutely not cliche. It's very inventive. And it reminds me a little bit of me, where I would be sitting in that chair and my mind would be ticking, 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 ticking. Not in a negative way, just in a way where I'm thinking about things. And I love the way that the crisscross area is done so lightly. And then the boldness of that saturated blue in the lower, I mean, I think it's a brilliant piece. And then it's really dynamic and says a lot, evokes a lot, and it's totally not cliche. And I think it's really well done.
Me too.
Thank you. That's probably like the first painting I did. I haven't done any more since then, till last year.
I'd encourage you to go back maybe after you go through the workbook and retackle this one. There's a couple little modifications that you can make on it that would take it to a whole nother level.
I had to glaze those bars about 300 times. I don't know. But I don't know what needs to be done.
I would suggest 2 or 3 things, just real quick, in terms of telling the story. Right. One thing I would suggest is that you extend this out further. Okay. Why? So that we spend more time, because you're at the beach, you're relaxing. You want to spend more time in that zone, and then if you move the chairs, maybe in about here, so half the chairs are halfway in that piece, halfway in here. That puts the crisscrossy thing behind the person, which now tells a story that you've come to the beach, you had anxiety, you sat in the chair, and now you've rested off into peace. And that transition will make people feel like, they'll feel the anxiety. You understand me, you have empathy, but you also know what I'm aspiring to.
That's awesome. I love that idea.
Yeah, you'll feel the journey.
You feel the journey.
We were talking about before, the journey of entering on the left in a certain frame of mind and then changing. This is where Don Victor does his magic. You can't believe the magic he does.
That's painted with house paint, by the way.
Really?
I love it.
That's awesome.
The little paints that you buy.
Yeah. My first student I had, his name is Bill Jordan. He was a house painter. His father was a house painter. And when he retired, he wanted to basically, paint the paintings that went on the walls instead of painting the walls. And so kind of as a poetic justice, if you will, he painted his paintings. He did a show in New York, and he had 13 paintings he put in the show, and he did them all in house paint, and it was just kind of like just part of the poetry of the experience. And they came out fantastic. It was cool. All right. So I hope that helped there, Miss Katie.
It did.
John Victor, what was that last squiggle of line? What was that all about?
Oh, I was trying to do the little bars in there, but sometimes my stylus gets stuck and it makes a squiggly, and it was just being rude.
I'll have to go back to Seaside, Florida. See if I
there
can
you
find that place.
There's a good reason to go back.
That's
okay,
the
cool.
first time I ever went there and the white sand, just, it blows your mind to see that. It's like sugar.
Oh, wow.
Sure. Now imagine like you did something the opposite direction, right? So let's say you have a rectangular canvas, okay? And let's say you're going back into the city. So here is the city area. You might be coming over a bridge, and then you might have just some nice clouds that are moving you across, okay? Now, what's interesting is because you're going up and down, which isn't a very happy feeling, because it's like, oh yeah. And then if you come in and you bring in a lot of verticals and horizontals and diagonals, maybe it's something with the light, you're coming into this place of anxiety, and you're kind of coming away from maybe your vacation back to work, right? Back to that. So it could be the same thing, but just totally different, like just flipped, and it's very different story. You can see this, like if we come here and we're doing a straight line into the city, that's a very different feel than the curve was. And then if we go the other way, if we want to make it maybe like a little bit of more of an adventure, we might come down a little bit. Okay, because now we're moving up in an optimistic way versus down. And that brings us up on what we call a Baroque diagonal, which is inviting and welcoming. And if we're coming here, now we're coming down on the sinister, which becomes more of this secretive, enclosed kind of feel. And so the lines that you work with all have like a psychology to them. And when you get familiar with them, you can tell stories by how you move the eye. And I've been doing this long enough and having enough people to experience it that we have this consensus, like it works 80 to 90% of the time if you ask people just little common sense questions of how they feel with things. So for example, since you guys are here, let me give you an example. So let's say we have a rectangle, okay? And in the middle of that rectangle, we have a king. Okay? That's my king. Now, we don't know what that rectangle is. It could be a window, it could be the back of a wall, it could be whatever, okay? Without thinking of any nouns, without thinking of context, if we want to make this king feel like a peacetime king, he's a king during peace times, and we want to honor that about him in this portrait. Katie, which of the three lines, a vertical, horizontal, or a diagonal, would you primarily use to fill in that space?
I believe horizontal.
Yeah.
Peaceful.
Would anybody disagree?
No.
So what's crazy is I think one person who was being a little playful did not say horizontal, right? So my point is, like, you don't have to go to school to learn that. Like there's something in our biology at a primal level that tells us if we want calm and peace, we go horizontal. One of the things I did with the foster kids to illustrate this is I had them stand very vertically against a wall for like a minute or two, and just become very self-aware about how the body begins to shift its energy. It tightens certain areas, and then asking them how they felt. They felt, well, I felt in control. I felt stronger. I felt like I was in authority. I felt like a captain when they went vertical. And then I had them all lay down on the floor and they almost all fell asleep, but they were relaxed. They're, you know, and so on a physical level, your body responds to these things. And so, Marion,
Yeah. Yeah.
If you wanted to make this king feel like he was a wartime king, like war, I'm in California, we don't have war here.
Yeah.
But he was a king of passion, right? Or war, or whatever, something along those lines. Which of the three directions would you primarily use?
Spears. I'd have vertical spears.
Well, let me ask you that. If you have spears and they're all vertical.
Ah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it might be diagonal.
Yeah, because now we're having this forceful push, right?
Against each other, yeah.
Exactly. So like if you had spears, and they were all vertical. Let's see what that looks like. Let's say we have
that guy's in jail.
He's in jail. Yeah, he's locked up, or he might be surrounded by some type of power, right, or influence. So that's one option. Let me erase that. Now here's a question. Here's a little tricky one. If we say diagonals, and now we can create different kinds of diagonal patterns, right? We could go up like this. We could come down like this. We could do very chaotic, small diagonals. All three of those patterns have a very different energy. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
So depending on the story, so when you think of your story, then you want to kind of go and dig a little deeper. Well, what's going on in this story? So for example, maybe we start with verticals back here because you come through and you feel a sense of authority and power. Then we might begin to lean in, and then the rain comes down and he's just annihilating and destroying everything, right? So as your eye moves through that experience, now what those things are, we don't know yet. Those could be horses with spears. They could be a certain type of terrain in the background. It could be a pattern. You could actually, if you do it right, you could actually make it a nighttime sky. And depending on where you put the stars, the eye would move through that and it would have that kind of experience. Cool. So, Nancy, did you have a question when you were going through it that you wanted to take a minute and get some help on?
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I did the first section, and I utilized it when I was working on a painting last week, and I was trying to do the composition, and it was fun doing the vertical, and then I did the horizontal, and then the diagonal is what I was looking at. And then I realized the actual head where she was the focal point, and I did it with the light and the dark. And it really helped to identify where that diagonal line went. So I didn't really have a question, but I wanted to tell you thank you because it really helped.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That is.
Yeah, the thrust map, I was trying to figure out, because I always wanted to write this book or create a program called The Public's Guide to Reading Art. Like something that you could give just a newbie, a guy who's working on, in a garage someday, and he took his daughter to the art museum. Like, how could you give him 5 or 7 little things to look for that would unlock a painting?
Oh, I think
And
great.
I
Yeah.
looked through hundreds over the last 25 years. I probably analyzed, I don't know, probably close to 1,000 paintings, I would think. I mean, like just getting in and unlocking these things. And so I set out to as a task. And I remember it was a Degas painting, where all of a sudden it just hit me. Wait a second. There's a vertical, so I had this little theory, and then I just applied it, and it almost works every single time. I'm not sure it has never worked, to be quite honest. Now what happens is a lot of times when you do a painting, let's say if you go into a gallery versus a museum, let's say you go to a gallery, and primarily the way I articulate the difference is that you have modern artists versus dead artists, right? For the most part. So what may happen is inside of a museum painting, you might have a dominant diagonal, a dominant vertical, a dominant horizontal. You might have a high point of contrast, or let's say a curve, and then a high point of contrast. Okay, you have those 5 elements. Now there's only 16 possible configurations of these 5 elements. That
Is that possible?
What was that?
I said, how is that possible? Couldn't you? You conceivably you could put them anywhere. Doesn't mean it's good design, right?
That's it. So let me give a caveat to that. This all 5 converge. If you want the clearest way of communicating, then you want all 5 to converge. Okay. If you're telling a story, you want someone to move through it, then the rule of thumb would be to have 3 converge, and then you can have the other 2, or you can have them, off doing their own thing, or they can converge. But the eye's going to travel to the path of the least resistance. So if 3 major elements are converging, the eye is going to go there as it travels through the painting. So if you walk into a gallery, you might see a painting that looks nice at first, but when you then go for that second look, you realize that maybe the horizontal's up here, and you might have a vertical here, you might have a curve here, you might have a high point of contrast here, and the diagonal might be a short one that ends there or something. And so it doesn't matter, like if I do a rectangle and I just put a point inside there, 1 dot, that has all 5 elements. The point, the white against the black, high point of contrast. We now know where the dominant vertical is going to be. We know where the dominant horizontal is going to be. We know that this here is the dominant diagonal. And because of the way the eye flows, it's going to go the path of least resistance. So this is the big area. So it's going to start here. It's going to go to this place, then this place, and that place. So then you have this arabesque that flows through it. So it exists in every image that you see. The question is it being organized and intentional and deliberate, or is it being intuitively random and accidental and arbitrary? And it's just a simple little thing that doesn't take very much time, but it brings so much power to the work.
It really helped me. And I can see that one simple thing in a lot of the abstract paintings, which really don't have any meaning, or you can't really tell what the subject matter is, but it's all in that kind of relationship to one another.
That's awesome.
It's interesting. A lot of, when you go back and read the quotes of a lot of incredible painters, they'll talk, when they get into composition, they talk far more about it being an abstraction of things, because it really is the spirit and the soul. I mean, Michelangelo said it. He said the very essence and source of painting, architecture, and sculpture is design. Like, it's not the form, it's not what you look at. And sadly, I think what happens nowadays is, because 20, 30, 40 years ago, we went into this abstract expressionism, and the artist then had to hear everybody say, my kid can do that, right? So they're like, hell no. So they went the opposite direction to this. I think, the pendulum swung to this point where it's so focused on technical skill and the ability to make something photorealistic, so that no one can ever tell you that your kid can do that, right? So they get the kudos for the skill. But the problem is, so many of those images, though well executed, have no soul, have no life. And if you even get in a conversation with some of those artists, they don't even know what you're talking about, because it's only real if they can touch it, Or I was working with the foster kids the other day, and one of the kids was sitting behind a pole, and they were like in this little bunch of 3 of them. And I told the one kid, I said, draw the kids, right? He said, how can I draw? He's behind the pole. I said, well, look through the pole. He's like, what? Now, he was like 17, 18 years old. And I said, well, babies have this problem. When mommy walks into the other room, mommy doesn't exist, and they freak out. They can't see through the wall. They can't perceive that, there's something more than what's in front of their eyes. So, but that's what the design is. It's really mastering the invisible parts of the painting. And the master actually spends more time and is more concerned about the parts that you don't see but you feel than the parts that you actually see.
Interesting.
Just like a master communicator, he's going to focus on his words, but in communication, the words you use only account to 7% of the effectiveness of communication. The rest of it's tonality, which we have tonality. It's called values. And then we have body language, which is the use of your composition, your design. How you actually move and express energy.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
About my painting, if I did it again and extended it over, like you said, the angle of the walkway goes down. I didn't do anything different in the painting. I mean, the shadows look like that. The sunlight hit those zigzag things, and they were bright, so you couldn't really see the detail. But if I have the point of perspective would be going straight down. To me, that's like decompressing from that stress of the haphazard angles. It's not like a downer. I just wondered if that would.
Well, let's look at that. So let's say we move the picture this big, okay? So this area then would be, let's say come on, you can do it. What's going on here? Okay. So we extend this here, and we come all the way across. So that's the area that we want to compose.
That's the area you want to what?
Compose.
Compose.
Right now, okay? So now what we have is, in the middle of this thing, we have this diagonal that shoots us down here, okay? My question to you, Katie, is, do you even need the walkway?
It was just pretty. It was going right down to the ocean, and there was 2 sides of it going down there.
Okay.
So,
Don Victor, if you don't have the walkway, though, all you've got is a bunch of verticals going all the way across.
No, actually,
You have verticals here, and then it stops here, and these could actually just be steps that go down into the sand, and then you just have this beautiful
you need
horizontal.
something other than the walkway then. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't need anything. It could just stop
just
there,
an
right?
opening with the steps that you didn't see.
Yeah.
Or you could even technically take away the front of that and just have it open.
Because if you have the walkway, it also leads your eye right out of the painting,
Yeah,
right?
you're right about that.
It's so pretty. And I think your eye really is focused on the shadows on the floor too. Kind of almost don't even see the walkway, do you? Really?
Well, if you have this walkway here, right, and it comes down, let's say it only comes here, and then it goes out. Come on.
I should raise the ocean up, shouldn't I?
Probably.
Yeah.
I didn't change anything. It's just the way it looked. So.
Yep. And let's say the walkway comes here, and then you're saying that it comes from this side as well, right?
Yes.
So it's that kind of shape.
That's what
Now,
I'm.
I like that because what we can do is if we came in, let's say, and we brought up right about here a little bit of a sun or a hot spot, right? We
Yeah.
brought this shadow all the way across here, and then maybe just put something, maybe your signature right here. Well, now what we end up having is your dominant vertical. But right here comes a dominant vertical. So by pushing these chairs so that they're here, it then breaks that dominant vertical and it allows this to be the more dominant one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have this diagonal coming through here, then you could vignette, which is just to darken that little edge a little bit up here, and then bring something down in here so the eye can then just keep
Frame it.
yeah. And it's really just to get to bring the eye back into the image and keep it in that area. So I think what you have here is an incredible drawing.
I have a question.
Yep.
If you guys all, which I thought you were so appreciative of the chairs and all the slats and everything, why then are you going to have everybody concentrate on the other side of the painting, which would just be sky? I mean, that's
a good question.
The shadows and the slats and the chairs were the interesting part.
For two reasons. The first reason is this crazy little word here, the story. What is the purpose or the meaning of the painting? So in my mind, when I was going through that, as we were talking about earlier, it was to get away from the hecticness of things and transition into this tranquility. Now, if that's the story, then this design works really, really well for it. If the story is something else, if it's something else, for example, if the story is a balance between the two, then this design doesn't work well for it. So you might want to put a little bit more over here, and then, so it's halfway. So that's one, that's the first thing, is the story. So that's why well, at least I was focusing more on that side of it. There was a second part, but I can't remember what I was going to say.
Are the haphazard shadows all right? I mean, are they part of the confusion and stress?
I don't think so, because when you're looking at it, you're looking at the line, but what's between the line? Space.
Mm-hmm.
And your space, I think the fact that they have these nice big pieces of space, it goes from this very congested small space, long lines, and then it begins to transition and open up, and it opens up.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
So, now I personally feel like this area with the, it kind of feels like a little bit too jelly. So maybe.
What does jelly mean?
Like you're in jail, like you're in prison.
Oh, jelly, not jelly.
I thought he said jelly too.
And so what happens here is you have this high point of contrast right there. So that brings your eye there. You have it with these horizontals and this vertical. So it's very, very stable, very controlled and condensed and pressured.
So that would be even better to go tell the story of going out to the ocean. And
It could, except that it's in the middle of the painting, right? So maybe, and this is where you have your artistic license. Maybe instead of doing vertical slats, maybe just 2 horizontal ones would work well, right?
What about, like, this was like an Eastern style pagoda,
Yeah.
and they have those Eastern style that are different angles.
Oh, okay, cool. You know, I would even entertain the idea of, like I said before, like the whole railing, the walkway, all of that, just removing it all together and seeing what that gives you, and just really open up that space. Even as an architect, that's how I would think. Like, now maybe you have to have it there so the kids don't run off the edge. I don't know what.
Yeah, that's a pretty big drop there.
Oh, okay.
But
you know, one of the I was working with an artist, and John out of Florida, and he did a painting, and there were and he worked from photographs, and he showed me the painting, and I'm like, dude, why do you have this stop sign in the middle of your painting? It's like, well, because it was in the photo, right?
yeah.
And he needed a way to have the permission to not put a stop sign in the middle of his painting. So we kind of came up with a technique called F the photo. And and together we screamed with wonderful levels of passion and joy, F the photo. And it's just like, and some of the artists I work with do that to kind of, before they start drawing and painting and working on their work, to remember that they are the artist, and that their photograph or their model or whatever is merely the reference, that they are the ones in control. And you want to know, what is it that you want to communicate? What's your story? What is the meaning? What's the experience that you want the viewer to have? And then make not decisions based on what you see, but on what you want them to experience.
Exactly.
And so it's totally okay if it's, you know, if it's good for you in the story, to remove things or to add things if you need, you know, or to modify things. So, Marion, I have a question for you. Did you have a question or something that you wanted us to go over?
No, I just know that I need to work on composition, and I'm not, you know, I went through this book because I need to, and I can't say that I would ever do this. I think it's a lot of analyzing that I would never do even when I look at a painting. So I'm not sure.
You know, I read an article.
I don't know how to use it. Like, I looked at your video on Degas, which I thought was really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that painting, and I've never ever thought any of those thoughts. And I thought it was very interesting how you analyzed it. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about. It's the one with the two ballerinas against the.
Oh yeah, where they're dancing.
Yes.
And well, he's focusing on the dance, not the dancers.
Exactly. But I never would have done that had you not talked about it. I mean, it looked to me like two beautiful figures that were kind of, you know, it was interesting. I liked the painting. It just, I'm not sure I would have ever noticed had I not watched that video, that if the leg of the one dancer moved over, did you disappear?
I'm still here.
Oh. If the leg of the one dancer moved over and her body turned, that it would then be in the position of the other dancer. Mm-hmm. So, you know. So
if you don't mind, we can take. I love this painter. His name is Joseph DeCamp, and we went through a couple of these paintings last night, and if I can just show you a couple things and have you experience these paintings a little bit differently, it might give you some insight into what's possible for your work. And I read an article the other day And I remember hearing about this, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago, and I couldn't find it. And all of a sudden I found the article again. And, and they were explaining the difference between the Venetian painters and the Florentine artists.
Uh-huh.
And they had a word called designo, which is a word I'm very familiar with because that's what we were trained in, which is this Italian way of drawing where it's just not drawing and rendering. It's actually it's designing what you draw.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And that's how the Florentines, the Michelangelos, the Da Vinci's, and those guys approach their work. But the Venetians were much more like how a lot of artists are today, which is, you know, they get a canvas, they're going to sketch a little bit, maybe with a brush on the canvas, and then they get into the color. And they were called, it was called Corlito or something. That was the name of it. And I'm reading this article, I'm like, oh my gosh, like these are the two camps. And sometimes, you know, depending on who you are, you may fall into one versus the other. Excuse me. So what I've done in my system is I have what I call a macro and a micro.
Uh-huh.
So some of the artists I worked with just need the macro, the big picture composition
You mean the
things.
slow ones like me, right?
Well, no. Both are absolutely important because the macro is what makes you win across the room. So when you walk into a room, I always say it's like walking in a bar, you see a beautiful woman, you're like, hey, 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 right? And you walk up, well, at least I'm a guy, so I say, hey, hey, right? So I walk up to her and to engage into a conversation. So the macro, she attracted me from across the room, right?
Gotcha.
Now, why is that important? Most artists don't even have that down. And so when you go into a gallery and you squint your eyes, all of a sudden all the paintings disappear because they can't control values. There's no control of them. The design's out of whack. You know, there was a local gallery down here, and I had my daughter when she was 3 years old. They gave her a big canvas to paint on. And the one artist guy is like, oh, she can use any color she wants. I said, not my daughter. We're gonna limit that thing. We're gonna give her a soloist and 3 little ones that she can play with. And I knew if I just gave her a little constraint, whatever she did was gonna be great because there was some order to it. And we let her go, and she did it. By the end of that day, she sold it. They hung it up in the gallery, and then this couple came in about a day or two later, and they walked through the gallery. They wanted to buy that one over all the other paintings, right? And so she sold her painting twice at 3 years old. It was kind of funny. So she tells everybody, I'm a professional painter. I sold the painting.
Yeah.
And so the macros are very important. The thrust map is a way of doing a macro, right? That's bringing order to your composition very quickly at a big level. That just makes it feel better. So for example, if we look at this painting, I don't know if you guys seen this video that I did on this painting before.
I haven't looked at it, no.
Okay, good. This is going to be a treat.
Is it on your page or?
Yeah, but we're going to do it now. Okay. So basically what I want you to do is if you went through the thrust map on this one, which we're not going to do, what it would do is it would lead you, well, let me ask you this. Where would you say the dominant vertical is in this painting?
The dominant vertical. Maybe her leg up?
Here?
Yeah.
Coming through the baby and then coming up through the tree?
Yeah.
Or the head and
Or the head. Yeah.
Now the head you would think, right?
more on the side, I guess, is what I was thinking.
Oh, like over here or over here? Over here, right?
Yeah.
I can't draw with this thing.
That's okay.
So if you go through the thrust map on this, you'll find that he converges spots in 2 places. Okay? He converges a spot here, right about here.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that they're like the major diagonal comes through here.
Right.
The high point of contrast is there. I believe the arabesque comes up through there. So there's 3 there's 3 areas that converge there. And then here you have your dominant horizontal coming through here, and I believe it's your vertical here. But basically your eye ends up here. So what I want you to do is I'm going to erase these lines, and I want you to bounce your eye between right above the breast and down right where the baby's butt is touching her leg, and just go back and forth a couple times and tell me what happens to this painting.
Does she swing?
She swings.
Oh my gosh.
And you're not even eating mushrooms. Like, that's the brilliance of design. Now, this woman and those 2 kids are the artist's wife and his kids, right? And here he constructs the head. Look at the head. You'll see this in one of the Norman Rockwell paintings. All verticals and horizontals.
Mm-hmm.
You feel it? And above her shoulders, where's all the noise? There is none. She's in a moment of peace. She has her mind about her, right? She's above. The kids the one fell asleep, the other one's kind of drifting off, and she's just rocking. If you allow your eyes to move through the design, you can see the beautiful curve coming through here, bringing you down.
That's all I see. I see curves. I don't see really verticals.
Through her face?
Well, I see a lot of curves, and I can see the horizontal, but the vertical is kind of a stretch for me. But okay.
Fair enough. But the power of this painting is having that, as your eye bounces back and forth between those 2 areas, the whole painting rocks. It moves, right? So he was incredible. I encourage you to look at the Joseph DeCamp paintings. Like, for example, here, this one is, I love this one. So what is she doing?
Playing the violin.
Exactly. But now I want you to remember that a master isn't focused on what it is she's doing in terms of what we see or look at, but he wants to make us feel what she's doing, right? So when we analyze the lines, you have the long stroke of the violin coming up through here. You can see the curves even in the values in the back, how it gets a little dark and light here. He brings you through here, down through here, a light to dark relationship brings us to the bird, up through here, back down. And if you allow your eye just to move through that, you can actually feel her playing the violin. If you've ever seen someone do the violin, they have that long stroke and then that short, and I'm going to erase those lines and now look at that image. It comes alive. You can't not see that anymore.
Who's the artist for that?
That's the same, Joseph DeCamp.
Oh, the same one?
Yeah. And so we discovered, I love this one. This is a brilliant one. Oh. I did an analysis on this one, but you have all of this space. Feel that quietness. And then all of a sudden, you have this light shoulder, dark light shoulder over here. Notice how the lightness of her shoulder here kind of almost fades away into the background. Right. So what happens is your eye descends very, very gently. And then, I got the song. This is the moment in which the guitar player gets the song, right? Like, this is beautiful pause, like she's listening to it in the invisible, and now she's got it and she plays. Right. So like,
let me ask a question about the, I guess it's a coat, or what is that draped over on the side of the,
I have no idea.
Reddish thing. What, that kind of stops the eye from going off the canvas, right?
Sure. Yep. So
otherwise it just kind of curls around in
because this would come up and then this would come back through somehow. It looks like it
Well,
probably
I see it
connects into
going up
here.
the paper and then around again. Yeah.
Oh, you see this coming up? Yeah, yeah. There's a curve up underneath her arm coming right
Yeah.
up through there.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you look at the blues up in here versus the yellows or the warms and the cools, you can see there's a line that he's created.
Yeah.
So these are the subtleties. It's, you know, it is about temperature. There's a reason for temperature there. There is about value shifts, but why? And when you have your story, if the story is, you know, in this case, you don't want the eye to shoot off. So how do you bring it back? You know, bring the eye back in, and you know, so it really just comes down to like, what is your what experience do you want to have with art, and if it's important that you have a story that you want to put out there, and not let it be quote unquote open to interpretation. I mean, people will interpret your work as they will, but if you want to limit that and actually share a concise idea and be heard, then it's important to take the time to learn how to to visually communicate that. And drawing and rendering is an incredible skill, but it doesn't communicate things as design does. And I'll show you one last one. We looked at this one last night. Very simple. It looks very simple. Same artist. And what I love about him is he draws women. But if you notice, like, and I'll show you in this one, he must have had an incredible relationship with his daughter and his wife, or maybe his mother or someone, maybe his sisters, because he has this incredible sensitivity of understanding the nuances of how a woman thinks. And it's just incredible. So like in this image, Nancy, how would you describe the difference in the face? And I'm not talking about necessarily the look, but just the way that it's created, the head of the mother versus the daughter.
Well, to me, it's obvious that the daughter is the focal point. The mother is just, her face is more muted. My eyes are so bad, but that's what I say.
Perfect. So one thing that we can see with this is if we're looking for lines, you can see again a calmness in the back, right? Very low value contrasts, lots of these horizontal movements. Sure, it kind of breaks down a little bit here, but for the most part, it's moving left to right. If you squint your eyes, at least the top of that mom's head just vanishes right into the background, okay? But she kind of vanishes away too, right? So what's happening here is she's spending this moment with her daughter, and she's moving back. You can see that dominant diagonal coming right through there. She's pushing back in a moment of peace so that her daughter can move forward and actually own the moment, right? It is like a powerful, powerful moment. And then if you look for the dominant arabesque, look at this enclosure, how the arm of the daughter and the mom are one. There's almost no separation there, right? So there's just this gorgeous up through the book. You have it coming back up through here. I mean, it's just about a mom spending time with her daughter, and she just leans back and allows her daughter to step forward, you know?
I see them in a little cocoon almost. It's all curved in together.
Yeah.
With both arms. The other arm of the mother too. So there's that closeness, and then the leg curving up toward her too.
Yep. So all of these things are coming back in. I like that cocooning, you know,
Yeah.
She's protected. You know, she's safe.
That's beautiful.
Oh, and John Victor, I loved it when you explained the very important aspect of the shrub on the right, and then how he kind of repeated that in her leg. Like, I
Yeah.
thought that was brilliant because as a portrait artist, you want things to feel natural, but you don't want everything to be meaningless and arbitrary. So what was your explanation?
Well, when I saw it yesterday, I thought, oh, wow, look at it. It kind of has a very similar movement, which doesn't exist anywhere else in the image. And I almost felt, and I don't know this as a fact, but as an illustrator, I would say, oh, he's representing her blossoming, right? She's sprouting up. She's like this young sapling. She's moving. She's growing, and because there's no reason to have that tree there. None. Someone who is this sensitive and putting that much time into composing out that kind of image, if there's a bush there, it's intentional. Well, that was a cool meetup there, ladies.
That was
Thank you.
Thank
you.
great. I just wanted to mention, I've been painting for, gosh, I'm 57, went to Rhode Island School of Design. I was a workaholic. I never was taught any of this, and I've been struggling to make the best work I can make and to make a living off of it for a long time. And my life really has turned around with Don Victor because he's teaching me the language of design, like as if I was learning French or Greek. That is what art is all about. And it is a language that you need to absorb over time. And every time I listen to Don Victor explain something, he shows me things that are right in front of me and I would never have known. It was just like the ballerina thing. I love that painting. I saw it at the Metropolitan Museum. And I wondered, why did he handle certain things this way and that way? Why did he do this painting? And then Don Victor explains why. And suddenly it's like, eureka. Oh, that's why he took all that time. That's what his intention was. That's why this work is a museum piece and not just, a cliche illustration. And as an artist, someone who's trying to be an artist actually, without understanding what Don Victor is teaching you, it's a shot in the dark as to whether or not you're going to do something of value. That's my honest opinion.
Nice.
It's like The Secret of Painters, like you've heard The Secret.
Well, there's actually a book called The Secret Geometry of Painters.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Savannah, Georgia, when I went to college down there, they had it at the library. And back in those days, it was about $300 for the book. Now they brought it back out in a paperback, so you can get it for like $19 or whatever. And I went to I never had experience with Baptist or Southern Baptist until this moment. But I went into the library and I said, "Oh, can I get the book on the secret geometry of painters?" And then they began to say, "Why do you want that?" Because of the geometry in it. There's a lot of people who think it's a little spooky when you get into it. But in that book, they break a lot of this down. Now, it's a little difficult to read it, but if you can get your hands on it, it's a good book to have. And they go and they analyze a lot of the geometry that goes into these paintings. Now, one of the things I've learned over the years is if we get into how do you break down a rectangle and you'll go through that a little bit in that workbook, but it's kind of like in the middle. That can make you feel like you have honey on your eyes. It's very. It's really meant for people who want to get into the tedious parts of it. But in it, there is a magic. It's called dynamic symmetry. And it breaks things into ratios and stuff. And what I've been able to do over the years is to create a grid system where it gives your painting all of the math that's required by the masters without having to know how to actually do it, right? And but but yeah, that's a good book. It is The Secret Geometry of Painters. And I remember when I was learning it when I was about 17, I met an old man in a town near me, Myron Barnstone. And he used to tell us that years and years and years ago, this stuff was held in canons. They were like, it was secret knowledge, you know, and people would die over that information. It's strange how we live in an information age that 2,000-3,000 years ago, it was held so sacred, you know, like, how do you make applesauce? Oh, that's our secret, you know, you can't share that, you know? So, but let me just share one last story with Donna about Donna. Donna and I, we worked, our first painting we worked on were these 4 little kids and a dog. And there's a video out there, I can send it to you if you want, but where we actually, our first meeting, it was the first time we met each other. And we go through this painting and she had these 2 photos of them and we had this conversation. And it was about what is the spirit or the personality or the soul of each individual child. How do you create a line pattern that makes you feel each individual child? And then how do you compose it all together as one big painting? And so she did it. The mother who commissioned her loved it so much, she put it in this $3,000 gold frame.
Wow.
Right? And then the other day, Donna had an old client who, I guess, if I'm correct, Donna, you did like, I think a couple portraits for her. One of them won some award or something.
Yeah.
And in a nutshell, like she brought her friend over who happened to be this client of Donna's. And she calls Donna and says, Donna, I'm really happy with the portraits you've done in the past. But whatever you did for her, I want that. And they're negotiating, I think, 3 more portraits like that.
This is the Rooney Mara family. You've heard of the actress Rooney Mara?
Yeah.
So the Rooneys own the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Maras, New York Giants. And so Tim Rooney married June Mara. So so it's significant people. And so what I'm trying to say is I did like 3 beautiful, very nice, beautiful. I worked so hard on it before I met Don Victor. Paintings of her first 3 children, of Kara's first 3 children. And we're talking about doing a painting of Kara with her youngest. So God willing, I'll do kind of like a Mary Cassatt painting of the mother and young son.
Wow.
I know, he's like 5 or 6. And that would be a dream come true. And I'm over at their house and she says to me, Donna, I love the painting you did for Melissa. And so this is her friend. And this was the first painting I did with Don Victor. And, you know, the paintings I did for Kara, one of them came in 6th place in a national competition with the Portrait Society of America. And I'm very proud of it. But the one that seems to really grip Kara's heart is the painting I did of her friend. And it's because I have the Don Victor design in it, and I have the math, and I have, you know, intelligent decisions on color and this and that.
That's
And
very cool.
I'm so grateful for it. And I want you to know this. The first time when I was like, I have like over, like you probably do too, all of you guys. I have like over 3,000 like Facebook friends, you know, like either I friend them or they friend me, whatever. And so one night I'm at my computer and a lot of them are art related. And this guy wrote something on this painting that my jaw dropped. I'm like, wow, that guy knows something that's really special. I said, I wonder if he would want to be my first Facebook friend. And I almost thought I wasn't up to snuff to ask him to be my friend. And I'm friending people right and left. And the one person I almost didn't friend was Don Victor. Can you believe it? I mean, like, wow. I was like, should I do it? I said, yeah, I'd better do it. Maybe he doesn't want to be my friend, but maybe he will. And
Like kids on the playground here.
I
Will you be
know,
my
I know.
friend?
It was so funny. It was so
I want to
funny.
hand you a note with yes or no on it. Yeah. Will you be my friend? Yes or no?
Well, that's a great testimonial to what Don's done for you. I mean,
I'm telling you, I never want in my life, I never want to do a painting or commission painting. Okay, maybe I'll do a study, something like that. But anything that I really want to have integrity without the co-working with Don Victor, because in my life, working alone has been a stressful situation. I like to communicate with people. You know, I want to ask someone with authority, not just anybody. What do you think of this? And I ask anybody, what do you think of this? And I'm like, oh, you think so? You know, but I can't tell you to have like a master, that's DV, over my shoulder like a guardian angel, and I can take a picture on my cell phone and say, Don Victor, like, what's going on here? And like 2 minutes later, he'll get back to me, he'll send me a diagram, and he'll very briefly, concisely say, this is it and this is it. I'm like, oh, eureka, yeah, of course. And it makes it that much better. It's an amazing gift. I think it is a burden for artists, unless you're a genius, for artists to be burdened with working alone and feeling like you need to know it all. And we know we don't know it all. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah. Or base all your paintings on how many Facebook likes you get, or Instagram heart, right?
That's
yeah.
I'm popular. And it's sad because you put your stuff out there sometimes. Hey, your dad's there. You put your stuff out there and you get the likes, or, you know, I've heard this happen a lot of times where, you know, something's kind of off and you want some feedback, but you can't figure it out. And then, you know, the people who love you, you know, they're like, hey, you're talented. You're great. You know,
Right.
pat you on the head, you know, good little artist. Yeah. And,
don't want to buy, like. Yeah.
Yeah, or even like your art friends, you know, it's like sometimes I find with artists, they can do things, but they may not have the ability to actually articulate what it is that they actually are experiencing or seeing. And so that's what, you know, my goal through all of this is not only to help artists be able to design and storytell. I can't help you to paint. I can defend myself as a painter, but you know, I'm not a painter. And there, you know, and there are people, you know, I can defend myself in drawing, but there are people who can just draw a hell of a lot better than me. But when it comes to storytelling and design, I can go into battle very, very confidently.
Yeah, Don Victor, it's going to take another 30 years, but
it's not going to take that long, Donna.
Well, I mean, like, you know, well, I'm just saying, you know, I mean, I'm just saying, what you put in, you'll get out. But besides that, he's giving you an authority. He's giving you a science, a technology. He's giving you information that in the 1500s they were doing in the Japanese prints over in Japan, and for some magical way they had figured it out.
The truth is, if you go anywhere, Africa, Asia, Europe, even South America, if you look at, I always say, like, if you go through 5,000 years of art history and you try to find what is the common thing that threads through it all, it always comes back to storytelling and design. You know, I mean, people will say, well, color. Well, maybe. I mean, the way that we think of color only exists about 150 years, I think, right? It's really not that old. And it came after the car industry, you know? So like before that, if you wanted color, you had to go climb a mountain and dig it out of the ground and break it up. And, you know, like manufactured colors really didn't exist that way. But, you know, and before painting, they were doing what? Mosaics and sculpture, you know, like, so it's really
design is king. Design
and story is the god that they all serve.
Right.
So
you can't get away from it. It's just amazing.
Yeah. any last questions, ladies, before we say goodbye?
Well, I'm kind of curious now that Donna's piqued my interest. How do you start with Don Victor?
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
You know, I mean, this is great.
Yeah, I love that question. Sometimes, like in the picture, in the first, can we pull up that picture, DB?
The one of the four kids? Yeah, I was looking for that.
So, like
I
in
know I
that
have it
case,
somewhere.
the client sent me like 4 pictures, and like, you know, it was very fractured. And this client lives in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm at the Jersey Shore. Never met the woman, never met the kids before. And I'm looking at this, I'm saying, like, what does she think is so great about this picture? Unfortunately, Don Victor had messaged me and said he was interested in my work. Did I want to have a meeting with him? And I said, yeah, sure. You know, I'm kind of open. And he goes, well, you have a project you're working on? And I said, you know, I just happened to get these images over like email. So he goes, yeah, that's perfect. Bring it along. And thank God he did, because I would have failed at that painting. I mean, I was just going to do something kind of stunted, more a little bit like Katie with what you were working with, you know, like something like this. And Don Victor, anyway, he analyzed the kids. He understood their personalities in a way that I didn't understand it. The client confirmed it. Yeah, my oldest daughter is motherly. Yeah, my older son, he's like the leader. You know, he's not the oldest, he's the second born, but you know, he's leading the pack. Yeah, this is the painting.
Oh, wait, I've seen this. Where did I see this? Did you have that on your website, Don?
It's probably somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, that's probably where it's at.
Yeah. So this was all like taken from 5 different pictures, you know, like I asked for some pictures of the scenery, so I had to design that.
Let me run through it real quick, Donna.
Do it. Yeah, because
you guys want me to run through this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So what
I'm sorry.
Man, look at your signature, Donna. It looks all like mastery and everything.
Because you told me to replace it.
So what's really nice is when Donna's like, I mean, Donna has like a portfolio of, I don't know, 40, 50 beautiful portraits that she's done. Probably even more than that, right? And when she goes out and she meets with clients and she flips through them, I mean, she has a portfolio that allows her to get into those people's homes. But as they're going through those portraits, this one they stop on, and because
more than once,
yeah, there's a sensitivity to quality, elegance, design, things like that. You know, that people feel in this. I remember one lady saying to you, Donna, I loved your work. I've been following you for a year, but this one has soul. You know, and so this is what we did. We knew that the girl, she was going to be the overseer, right? So we wanted to, how do you communicate that? How do you make her feel that she is looking out above over all the brothers? So that's why none of these guys come over that horizontal, only her. So when I go through this, I want you to think about it more like body language, you know. If you see a person, they're like, hey, I'm happy to meet you, but they have their arms crossed and they're really, really tight. It's like what they're saying, you know, they're happy to meet you, but their body language is saying something totally different. And so, so we have this horizontal coming through here, and only the daughter goes above it. We also have coming down through here this diagonal, and if you notice above her, she's in a state of like calm, collectedness, awareness. Like there's no confusion going on in her head or around her. We have the dominant vertical in this image coming through the leader boy. Okay, and it goes all the way up, even to the little sun up there. Now, what's really cool is we also managed the space. So if we come up through here, the painting's inside of a square. So this becomes a square that they're composed in. And if he's the leader, so he's stepping out of the square. So just on the sense of space, it makes us feel like he's leading this group of kids. Now, the thing is like, how do I explain this? I always explain it this way. Like if you took a piece of paper and you crumpled it up and you threw it on the floor about 3 feet away from you, and I asked you to get up and jump onto that little piece of paper, you could do that without really thinking, without any thought, right? Because your mind can like calculate physics and all algebra, like all kinds of stuff very, very quickly. So when it looks at an image, it's calculating all of these different things that it needs. And so one of the things that we do is we give the paintings what the brain needs, these certain ratios. So in this case, he's stepping outside of that that experience. I mean, out of that little group. Let me get my. So for this little boy in the center, we wanted him to be the active son. You know, the one that you have to be careful you don't jump off the steps when he's like 2, you know. And so what we're doing is then we're mimicking this energy through this picture, okay? And so it's really not just the boy, it's the energy that's around him. One way to think about it is, you know, like when it gets really, really hot and you look at the ground, and right above the ground, there's this heat wave that kind of distorts stuff. Mm-hmm. I think they call it a Nephos cloud or something like that, right? That's what you kind of want to begin to think about when you have an object or let's say a person. What's the invisible heat wave around them? Because let me ask you this question, Nancy. When the mother has this painting, do you think she's going to spend far more time face to face with this painting or walking by it?
As a mom?
Right,
are you going to stare at it with your coffee? But if it was just someone who bought a painting.
Very much.
You're very welcome. But if it was someone who just bought the painting and didn't have a connection to any of the children, you know, it would be a beautiful painting to have on their wall. And I'm not criticizing it at all, but I'm just saying, if you're a mom, you're right.
Fair enough. But over time, my thesis is this, that painters paint because they think that the person who's going to buy or commission the painting is going to spend most of their time staring at the painting, right? Face to face, right in front of you.
Yeah. Rather
than painting for the peripheral experience, which is the experience that you have far more of the time, right? It's in your peripheral vision. It's in your space. And that's why design becomes really, really important, because now when they look at it and they're conscious with their coffee, they have this beautiful experience. But when they're walking by, they're still having that experience because it's constantly broadcasting with or without them being engaged in it.
It's the vibrations, like a music, you know, and you feel it. And, you know, you even feel this when you're walking down the street. You'll get a certain vibration from one home to another home to another home, you know, and they all have a different thing.
Feel to them.
Yeah.
And if you stop and you analyze the design of them, then you can appreciate, oh, you see the architect, not the contractor. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So, you know, in Donna's case, she's the singer-songwriter. She's the composer and the performer in paint. Where most artists today is that they're so focused on the painting, but they never learn actually how to compose the music itself.
Therein lies the challenge, my friends.
My friends.
Yes, it's a challenge enough just to be a good painter. Then you have to put that on top of it.
Yeah.
It's true. So what Donna and I are doing, which is something I never pictured doing, but it kind of formed this way. We kind of collaborate on a painting, just like Kenny Rogers and Lionel Richie would collaborate on making great music. Because is it about the music or is it about the ego?
Well,
Or could it be both?
Let me say it better. Let me say it better.
Okay, fair enough.
As an artist trying to make a living, you live and die in your work. You know, you have a string of flops. You know, it's really hard to move forward to the next thing and say, yeah, I can do that for you. And for that amount of, anyway, with each commission I get, I am giving with great gratitude, and it never feels like I'm giving enough. I'm giving DV a percentage of whatever that commission is, because I know, hi Marion, I know that with DV as my silent partner, and I actually tell my clients, I'm working with a master designer, and I'm going to be putting this kind of work into your work. And I'm paying, I told a couple of new clients, hopefully it comes to sign contracts, talking business. I said, and I'm giving him a percentage of that stuff, because, you know, this is the kind of level I want to be performing at. I want to be performing at great design all the way to the end. And unless I can build a body of work and my mind is growing at a higher level, I think it's like driving with a couple of flat tires. It's not going to be a good trip. You're not going to go far. And I have more confidence. You know, hold on, Roscoe. I want you to know, this is what I said to Don Victor, and it was really good. I said, I'm 57 years old. I said, Don Victor, I was really getting tired swimming out there in the big ocean by myself. I'm tired. You know, I didn't get this back when I was 18 years old at Rhode Island School of Design, you know. I said, and now, thank God, you came along and you threw me a life preserver, and I grabbed onto that life preserver, and you're pulling me into your rowboat, and you're saying, row with me. Like, this is work to work with Don Victor. You don't just push paint around. It's thinking work. Row with me. He's rowing. I'm rowing. And we'll get there. We'll complete this journey, and then we'll go on the next journey, and blah, blah, blah. That's what it feels like. For me, as someone who's been trying to make a living, I've illustrated 3 children's books, William Morrow, Simon and Schuster too. I wanted, if I go back to children's books, it's because I want to be designing it with Don Victor. I have the confidence that I could do, you know, very insightful paintings of judgeships. And I got to find out, where are these wells of money? Where are the people who are willing to buy art, who can support, you know, where I can make, you know, I don't know, whatever it is, $30,000 a year. I'm grateful. And do quality work. So maybe I can move up to the next level. So maybe I'm not always just struggling and filled with doubt and exhausted from the experience. That's my life, kids. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding.
I get it. I do. It is always a struggle. But when you finally click on to something and you finally discover something, then it's well worth it. But then you turn it right around and you start another canvas and you're back in the soup.
Yeah. That's true.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be fun to work with you, Don, but I don't do commissions, but I'm starting a series of work that I would love to talk to you about.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's how I normally work with people first.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Donna is she's gone through the system, she's been around, and so you know, with her specifically, I was trying to, you know, quote unquote teach her this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But our relationship formed in a way where she wanted to move faster. And so what we realized is that it kind of had to become much, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's much more of like a writer who, you know, and
No,
having an
no,
editor.
no, let me explain it.
Okay, you explain.
fine.
You're better at this. But the only thing I'm going to ask you is if you ever say a boat reference,
Yeah.
don't put blah, blah, blah in there because it sounds like we're drowning.
Oh. No. I'm not a thief. I'm not going to absorb and take someone's. He's been studying this for 30 years. I don't have 30 years. You know? I'm not going to steal someone's time, energy, resources without compensating him. I'm just telling you the way it is. I know my success depends upon growing, and I don't have the energy to go take a train into New York City and do all this crap. I learn better in a one-on-one experience or with a group of artists like this. That's the other thing that you grow from. We form a great community. Some people come short time, they leave, they drift off. All right, that's life. But there's a few people who, you know, are like marathon runners. You know, they're in it for the long run. They're disciplined on their own, and then they grow like a well-watered plant with DV. And we all kind of get to know each other and support each other. And even if I have no work to share, just by sitting down in a session like this, like tonight, I didn't even get the workbook yet. I was like, oh, I'll deal with that someday, you know, because I'm overwhelmed sometimes. No, but look it. Just by listening to Don Victor go through the whole basics, like the ABCs, I'm like, that's right. Because repetition is the mother of education. You got to hear it over and over again. You got to look at like 30 more pieces of work and see where things patterns shape up and where there's variation. Anyway, that's the way it's going to be for everyone, I think.
So Donna, did you sign up through his website to one of those options?
I first did the website where I was like a student for like 6 months to a year. And then I've taken, like, I signed up for like the Core 80 class. So I did some things that were tuition based. And then as we created a better relationship, and I was texting him, you know, like maybe it's 5 times in a day. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because I'm trying to make a living and get my work done, you know, I mean, try to work at a decent rate, professional rate. I started to say, you know, with each commission I get, let me just give you a percentage so that I'm moving into this professional relationship as if we're a working team in a professional office. It's like a professional relationship, you know, just like other industries, you know, collaborate, but, you know, one isn't stealing from the other.
Right.
So there are a couple options. I would not really, unless you want to do a commission-based type of thing like that. That would be something we could talk about. But if I'm just meeting someone and they want to get in, then there are really like 2 options. Like right now, you're going through the course, right? So we have one option when you're going through the course, you can join the community and we can have an alumni give you feedback as you're going through it. You can post your work, that type of thing. Or you could work with me directly and I give you feedback as you go through the Core 80. Okay, we call this the Core 80. Now, the reason why I created the Core 80 was because I was teaching people this stuff, but it was still a little hard for them to get.
Yeah.
Right?
I can see that.
Now, but every time I would do an analysis, you could see like the understanding get bigger, like clearer. And it dawned on me, the reason why it's harder is because of the lack of confidence, not because of the information. So what's nice about the Core 80 is it gives you a foundation of the vocabulary. But if you go through it and you do it, you're actually going to see over and over. And if you go through the Core 80, like this is kind of like, you know, I give you 2 or 3 examples so you can do it in the workbook. But in the Core 80, it's asking you, you know, to post 20 images a week or whatever it is, right? So by the time you go through the whole thing, you've analyzed about 145 paintings where most artists honestly probably do 1 in their entire life, right? And in a 30-day period, if you can analyze 145 paintings of masterworks,
Yeah.
you're going to get in the mind of these people. So that way, when we work together, you already have that base. You already have the confidence that you know this works because you've seen it work.
Okay.
And
So
so
that's
that's
what you suggest. It's
yeah,
going through 480 first.
yeah. And
Okay.
and so, you know, I didn't really come on here ready to talk anything, but if you guys want, I'll spout it out. If you want me to work with you directly as you go through the Core 80, usually I charge $500 for that. Okay. And then if you want just an alumni to give you feedback on what you post, I think it's like 197 or something along those lines. The other option, which the Core 80 comes with it, is where you get to join us in a meetup like this once a week. Okay. And so if you're working on a project, you get to present that project and we can have a discussion of how you apply those techniques to your work. And the way that runs, it's basically a year commitment. Okay. It's $750 every quarter. Okay. Now I'll say something about the $750. Over the last three years that I've been doing this, what I realize is anybody who's paid under $750 has flamed out or flaked out. And everybody else who's put $750 down on the table or more has enough skin in the game that they committed to the end. It's just black and white. And so some people will say, well, can I pay $250 a month? I would not care, but I know it hurts them because it's not enough for them to be serious to the level that's required. And then they hurt themselves and then the rest of the group. So that's 4 payments over the year, every once a quarter. And what we'll do is we'll design one painting together. You'll go through the Core 80, and you'll basically primarily focus on several macros. Okay, so you get that big picture completed painting. The second quarter, you'll do 3 paintings, 3 images, and we'll get into some of the micro work, okay, the more detailed stuff. The fourth quarter, you'll do 4 paintings, and we really get into story. And then the last quarter, we can figure out how long you want to continue, if you just want to do a 5 image collection, or if you want to, work together for the next year to do a 15 to 20 image collection, a whole new portfolio type of thing. Or at that time, you would be in a place where if you wanted to do something like Donna does with me, where we shift and it's more of a commission base and we're kind of working together on things. So, so I'm looking at really, 9 months to work together to really get the vocabulary, the understanding. And what I want to hear is when we're talking and doing it, we can have a conversation because you understand enough that you begin to see it,
Right.
in your own work, how to apply it, see it in Masterworks. It will change the way that you relate to artists nowadays, because you'll go in and you'll see that it's not there. So like here's a cool example I read yesterday, and I just thought it was cool, and I'm going to use it forever. What was it? We walk down the street together. Okay. Now, if you write that again and you're not as careful, down the street, and you mess up the spacing to get her, it changes the story. It changes the experience of what you. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So by changing the spacing, the word together turns to get her, which totally changes the context and the meaning of that sentence. And when I was growing up, my drawing master used to say that when we do a painting, a work of art, we're creating an essay, we're writing. So like in our vocabulary, when when we're drawing something, or if you're making a mark with your brush, you're only going to make a vertical, horizontal, a diagonal, a curve, or a point. That's our alphabet as artists. There's an infinite amount of combinations, but there is no other alpha. There is no other mark that exists outside of those five. That's why we have a dominant horizontal, dominant vertical, dominant diagonal, a dominant arabesque, and instead of a point, we look for that high point of contrast. And you'll find that that thrust map, that the diagonal identifies the grids that you work in. The horizontal and vertical helps you lock in your layouts. The curve brings in life and grace into the image, and the dominant contrast is the starting point for you to map out your values. And so all of these layers are, I always say, have a voice. And the question is each voice speaking the same message? Because if not, you have one body, many voices, and that's called schizophrenia. And that's why sometimes you look at a work of art and it rubs you wrong, it rubs you wrong. How many times have you seen a painting looks beautiful and then the name is, Donna, huge across the side, and it just ruins the painting, right? So there's all of these little nuances that you want to become aware of. And in the beginning, it used to be very overwhelming. It probably still is. But with the Core 80, it gives you an incredible base. So when you get started, you're not lost. And you also have that confidence because you just saw 145, paintings.
So you do the Core 80 in 1 month?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I always say, if you're going to go through the video course, to do 2 sessions a week, that's in less than a month. And if you draw it out, then you kind of dilute it. You'll still get a good experience, but if you can condense that,
That's pretty intense.
It becomes extremely intense.
Yeah.
I think what happens is, honestly, I mean, for me anyway, it kind of rewires your brain.
Yep.
To think in the way you have to be able to think in order to, design, in order to tell the story. And the repetition of the Core 80 and going through all that stuff, well, I mean, your brain absorbs it in a way that is like, then you can move forward and you got like those dance numbers down, So listen, it was wonderful meeting everybody. I'm gonna say good night. Love you all. Anyone want to friend me on Facebook? I'm Donna.
What's your last name?
Find me through DV, okay?
I'll send all of you guys her
Absolutely want to friend you,
Thank you.
Donna.
That would be a lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing your work. And one more thing is, make sure you see through completion your artwork. Like Don Victor will help you design. You start to get the reveal of it. Don't just say, oh, well, I'll get around to doing it. No, follow it through. That first painting took me 4 months to do.
Yeah.
To figure it out. Where does the water end? Why? But it was worth it. And then the next one took maybe a little, whatever. But you follow.
But now, we'll talk about the story. We'll come up with a design. Maybe we spend an hour on it, right? And then she'll come back like in a day or two, and it's like, it's done. For the most part. Like, well, it's not done, but
Well, look,
we gotta
look. I'm not the total beginner, but like I said before, and I'm not kidding, I am the student for at least, I'm the apprentice. Apprenticeships were 7 years. back in the old times, 7 years of working under a master. That's the way I look at it,
And before you could start, what they would require the youngins to do, because you probably start around 7, you'd come in about 2 years before that, and you'd sit in the back of the room, and you were not allowed to draw, you were not allowed to do homework, you were not allowed to touch anything. You had to sit there and listen. So that way, as you graduated, the next year you got closer to the 3rd year, you were in the back of the room on an easel. And when the master came around and said, hey, do this, do this, do this, you are already, assimilated into that, the way that studio thought, and the way that, you were aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
But those are really cool little ships you got up there.
I have to say, I'm running out of juice, and my iPad just fell over. So, yeah, maybe
I'm
it's
going to get off too. Thank you. Nice meeting all of you.
Take care. Good
See you
night.
on
you.
Facebook.
Okay. Hey, Nancy, I love that painting over the mantle. What is it? Is it a Winslow Homer?
that one.
Yeah.
Oh no, that one. My husband and I were on our second marriage, and I think when I first fell in love with him, is he wanted to go to a starving artist show, and I said, sure, I'll go with you. He really didn't know anything about my art background, and so yeah, that was at one of the starving artist show. I love this painting though.
I think it's beautiful. And
Yeah,
I love your home. I love your woodworking. It's beautiful.
Oh,
It
yeah.
has a
Well,
cool design to it.
What's your last name, Donna?
Excuse me?
What's your last name?
Ayers,
You're the first one.
AIERS, and then Borbach.
Here, what I'll do is let me get her
Yeah.
URL,
I'll let
and
you
then
go. Bye.
all right, let me and then I can send it to you right now, and then you guys can click
I've
on it.
already found her, so.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I
There you
Donna.
he's a kick and a half.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, she has a lot of wonderful energy. She's
She's
very North Jersey, like Jersey, New York energy, and it's
Yeah, I know that was cute. I definitely look into the Core 80 though. I really find it fascinating. Thank you so much for taking
Indeed.
time.
Indeed
Yes,
Right.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
awesome. If you guys have any questions or anything, you can friend me. We're already friends on Facebook, I reckon, and you just reach out
Thank
and
you so much,
ask away.
Victor.
All right, cool.
Bye, Katie.
Bye.
Bye.